We're continuing our discussion of the 4 Ps that make up the marketing mix. So we have product, price, promotion, and place. So in our pricing strategy, there's a number of things we need to consider. The first is the cost of production. How much does it cost to actually make each unit? So in previous videos, we looked at the cost of goods sold. That is the costs that are tied directly to making a particular unit. And when we look at the cost of production, we conduct what's called a break-even analysis. So we recognize that when we make a particular product, we have the variable costs. Those are the ones that are included in the cost of goods sold that tie to every unit produced. The more you produce, the more you're going to need of those variable costs. So variable costs increase with the amount we produce. Then we also have fixed costs, costs that do not change with the amount that we produce. And so fixed costs, they're fixed, and then the more we produce, the higher they go. So you can see here, here's our fixed cost, and then the more we produce, the more the costs go up by the variable cost. So we can see that as we sell more items, we initially are not making any money because of the fixed cost. But the more we produce, the more we can spread out the fixed cost into each unit. And so as we sell more, for every unit we sell, we make a particular amount. That's the price we sell it for. And we get sales revenue. So we get the number of sales times the price we sell it for. So we want to identify that break-even point at which it starts to be profitable to produce and sell our goods. So we look at, is there ways to increase our profitability? Can we lower that break-even point in terms of the production process? We want to estimate our sales numbers, which we were talking about when we were looking at financial management, and that of course is going to be tied to the price. What price you set is going to determine how much of your target market is willing and able to buy it. And so we want to look at, can we hit a certain volume of sales to be profitable, to be past that break-even point, and what price would that be that would give us that? So we're looking for a price that is profitable. We also want to consider elasticity of demand. So how sensitive are our customers to a price change? In economics, we talk about elastic versus inelastic. So if demand is more elastic, you change the price and the amount people are willing and able to buy changes a lot. So you can think about that as a demand curve that's a lot flatter. If something has inelastic demand, you change the price and the amount people are willing and able to buy is going to change just a little. So there are factors such as something being a necessity will make it more inelastic. Purchases that are a big percentage of your budget, like cars and houses, are going to be much more elastic. If the price changes, you're going to think twice before making that purchase. We also can look at if we're looking at something very specific, like a brand name versus more generic, in terms of more general purpose, like buying clothes or food, that's going to determine the elasticity of demand. So we can look at your particular product and determine if the demand is more elastic or inelastic. So if it's a necessity, it's going to be more inelastic, and you can get away with charging a higher price because they can't live without it. So if we think about certain drugs, for example, are quite expensive. Well, what determines that they're inelastic? They are a necessity. People need them to live. So even if they're a higher price, people will be willing and able to pay for them as much as they can. And the less alternatives there are. So the number of substitutes determines whether something is elastic or inelastic. So if there are not a lot of competitors, demand is going to be more inelastic and you can charge a higher price. If it's a product that does something very special, very specific, so if we look at like AutoCAD in terms of designing for engineers, there's not a lot of alternatives, so substitutes are low. It's very specialized in terms of what it does. All of those make it more inelastic and lead to a higher price. When things are more general purpose, when there are more alternatives, when it's more of a luxury, people can live without it, that's going to make them more elastic and more sensitive to price change, in which case the prices are going to tend to be lower. The other thing we look at when we set price is our competitive advantage. How are we competing? And so are we competing based on differentiation, in which case we are trying to convey that we are better quality or that we are unique, in which case we might use a prestige pricing approach. That is, we're going to set a higher price to convey that image of quality or uniqueness. Or perhaps we are going to compete more on cost leadership, in which case we're going to set a profit margin to be a certain percentage, and then we are going to keep that percentage constant. So we're going to try to keep the costs low to keep the prices low. But if our costs do have to go up, then it gets passed on to the customer, and we're using what is called markup pricing. So we're maintaining kind of a fixed percentage for our profit margin and adjusting the price as the costs adjust. There are different pricing strategies. So we can do what is called penetration pricing. So as we talked about in a previous video, we may use a lower than normal price to introduce our product to the market. So we want people to try it. And if we're not willing to kind of do our samples and test it out, we may at least start with an initial lower price to make it more accessible to more people to get them to try. This will hasten market acceptance and increase our market share. It may also discourage competitors from entering for a period of time if it's not profitable for them at that lower price. We could also be a loss leader, so we could have a lower than normal price to encourage purchases of other items. So if we think of things like rotisserie chickens at the grocery store, you'll notice the price of a rotisserie chicken is essentially exactly the same as the price of an uncooked chicken in the other part of the grocery store. So it's a loss leader. They're selling it below cost because they're not taking into consideration the time of the person who had to cook that chicken on the rotisserie to sell it. And why do they do that? Well, if they can get you to come in and buy a quick dinner, like a rotisserie chicken, then they know once you're in the door, you're going to buy all the other things you need for that dinner, plus probably some much extra things as well. So it's to get you in to buy one thing, and that'll lead to many others. You may do what is called price skimming. So we may have high prices for a limited time. So we were talking before about the product's life cycle, and you may have high prices initially when you start up. Maybe that's because the product that you are selling, there was a lot of research and development initially where you had a lot of cost incurred, and then you didn't make any money while you're doing all that development, and so you need to make that cost up quite quickly. We can think about Kickstarter campaigns, for example. So somebody comes up with this creative idea, maybe a board game, and it gets released on Kickstarter. So the price they're releasing on Kickstarter is probably a higher price than once the company gets up and running. Because once the company is more established and they have manufacturing plants and they're selling a larger quantity, then they're able to take advantage of economies of scale. Remember, economies of scale is lowering the cost per unit by selling a much larger quantity. So this allows you to spread out big fixed costs. You can do things like buy your inputs in bulk, and those things help lower the costs overall. So price skimming is a high price at the beginning and then you reduce it later. We also might have follow the leader. This is where you are pricing based on somebody else. So if we look at gas stations, for example, you'll notice that one gas station raises their prices, others follow. This is follow the leader. This is what is called tacit collusion. It is legal. What is illegal is overt collusion. So if the gas companies got together over a round of golf and said, hey, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, I will sell less to drive up the price, you do the same, that's against the law. That's anti-competitive practices. But follow the leader, where it's just simply a matter of decision of where you can see what other people are charging and then you decide if you want to do that, is legal. So tacit collusion is completely legal. And you may choose to follow the leader because you assume they know something you don't. Maybe they have indications that their costs are going to go up. And so you follow their pricing because you assume they know something. Maybe their costs are going down, so they lower their price. And so you follow because you assume that they know something. We see this follow the leader approach often when it comes to airlines, for example. There are certain airline companies that are seen as barometric leaders. They are seen as a barometer of what's happening in the market and the environment, and so the other airlines follow them. So you can think about companies like WestJet, Southwest Airlines. They are low-cost competitors, and so they have a very low profit margin. So if they start raising their prices, it must mean that costs are going up, and the other ones who have much larger profit margins follow suit. We have variable pricing. This is where you charge different prices to different customers. It is legal. It is what is called price discrimination. So price discrimination, actually, let me just write some of this out here. So, and let's make it bigger. That's kind of hard to see. So price discrimination. We are going to sell an identical product to different people for a different price. So in order to price discriminate, what we first need to do is we need to separate people based on elasticity of demand. All right, so we need a way for people to identify themselves, whether they have more elastic or inelastic demand. And you'll recall from our previous discussion that you have elastic demand if when the price changes, the amount you are willing and able to buy changes a lot. And you have inelastic demand if when the price changes, the amount you are willing and able to buy changes just a little. So how can people indicate their elasticity of demand? Well, the age of the person purchasing. So you can think about the adult price of the movie theater ticket versus the senior ticket. A senior is going to be much more elastic, much more sensitive to the price change because they're on a fixed budget. So when the price changes, they can no longer afford to go to the movie theater. The adult is going to the movie theater on a date or as part of an event. They have to see this particular movie in that exciting environment where everyone's there, the ambiance of the theater, and so they're going to be buying not based on price. So the age of the person who's purchasing, the time of purchase. So if we think about when you fly on airplanes, business travelers versus those going on vacation, those going on vacation will book their flights 6 months ahead of time. Those who are purchasing last minute are probably business travelers. Business travelers really have to be at that meeting, and so they're a lot less sensitive to the price change, so they're inelastic. Those who are going on vacation, if the price changes, they'll just choose not to go, so they have more elastic demand. So we separate people based on elasticity of demand, and we can do that based on age, time of purchase, or volume of purchase. So we think about things like those who buy season tickets to the symphony or to a sports team versus those who buy for just a single event. So we separate people based on elasticity of demand. We charge different prices. And the key here is the one with inelastic demand pays the higher price, and the one with elastic demand pays a lower price. The idea here is that those with inelastic demand will still buy, and so you get more profit from them. And those with elastic demand, those who are much more sensitive to the price change, when you charge a lower price, then more of them will be willing to buy from you. So you're able to capture the quantity of purchases as well as charge a higher price and get a higher profit margin from some of them. And then in order for this to work, there has to be no resale. That is, we can't have granny scalping movie theater tickets in the parking lot. We can't have you buy and resell your season tickets or your airplane ticket, because if you do that, then everyone who buys at the lower price will just resell at slightly below the higher price, and the business makes no money. So price discrimination is selling identical products to different people for different prices. It is legal if you are doing it based on elasticity of demand. So charging different prices to people based on protected class, like gender, race, sexual orientation, that's not allowed. That's against the law. The price discrimination where we separate people based on their elasticity of demand and charge the higher price to those who have inelastic demand is legal. That is price discrimination, and that's the variable pricing that you see listed here. The last type of price strategy we want to talk about is price lining. This is where you offer a range of products at different levels of quality or a different number of features. So here we'll have a range of prices we offer. So if you think about an iPhone, for example, when they release each new version of the iPhone, there's different sizes in terms of storage space. So then the price differences are based on the amount of storage. Same product, but it is price lining where it's a range of prices. They're based on the number of features. You could also have a high quality version and a low quality version, say, and that would be the similar thing. Not mentioned here in this list was the prestige pricing we talked about before, which is charging a higher price to signal quality or uniqueness. And then the other one that's not mentioned here is surge pricing. So if you think about companies like Uber, when there's a high demand period of time where there's lots of people who want a ride, then that increased demand makes the price go up. In traditional markets where we have demand and supply, demand will of course drive the price up, but that's not something that's necessarily immediate, right? It's something that happens over time. If there continually is a shortage because people want more of a good than is available, so every time you go to the grocery store, it's not there that you're looking for, then eventually prices go up to make sure that there's enough for the people who want it. That takes time. Surge pricing, where we now have algorithms that allow for a quick change in price. Surge pricing is where in any particular moment we can see demand is high, and so the price will auto change. You can do this when you sell electronically, like through Amazon or Uber with on their app. They can see how many people are traveling at any particular point, and then they can raise the prices at that time. So essentially there's a shortage of Uber drivers, and so they raise the price so that only those willing to pay more will get the rides. On Amazon, you can see there's 5 items left in inventory, so there is a shortage of a particular item left. To be the last one to get it, you're willing to pay a little bit more. So there are a couple other price strategies we haven't listed here. Prestige pricing and surge pricing are 2 examples.